on pit row by the fantasy racing expert for NASCAR.com and YahooSports.com. Dan Beaver joins us. You can follow him on Twitter at FantasyRace. Hey, Dan, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing okay.
Just okay. We're going to the Miracle Mile, kind of flat 1 mile fast racetrack in New Hampshire Motor Speedway. That one's a little bit unique. Tell us about New Hampshire and what you see in your fantasy crystal ball for the week.
Well, I'd like to say that we're out of the woods after getting through this last 4 or 5 weeks with 2 repaved tracks, 1 track that was in its second year, a road course, and the wild card of Daytona. But I'm not entirely sure that's true. Last year, New Hampshire was one of the most unpredictable courses in the fall. The number of drivers that finished in the top 5 and top 10 had really not very good races in the first edition in this race last year. And a lot of the guys who finished in the top 10 in this race struggled in the second race. So we might not be quite out of the woods yet, but I think there's some light at the end of the tunnel where the next part of the schedule is concerned.
Well, I know this doesn't particularly help us with the first race at New Hampshire, but it seems to me, and I don't have the stats in front of me because I'm never as prepared as I should be, but this is one of those tracks that is often swept by a driver in a given year. It seems to be Hamlin's done it a couple times. I think maybe Jimmy Johnson swept this track. Is that true? And if it is true, do you look at those guys who swept in the past and give them any extra juice going into this race?
Well, it's not entirely true, recently anyway. Jimmy Johnson did it back in 2003, and Kurt Busch did it 1 year later in 2004. But since then, no one has swept victory lane in a single year. We've had a number of drivers, though, who finished in the top 5 in both races. And Tony Stewart came close to sweeping twice. In 2005, he finished first in this race and second in the fall. Last year, he finished second in this race and first in the fall. So that definitely puts him on my radar screen for this week.
Yeah.
That plus the fact that he's done so well on other flat tracks and the short flat tracks earlier this year. I'd say that Stewart, with his victory last week, the little bit of momentum he has on his side from recent weeks and his flat track record is the favorite for the Lennox Industrial Tools 301.
Dan, one of the I know this is another one of those things I kind of have a feel for that some prognosticators look at Indianapolis and Pocono as indicators for New Hampshire, while others look at Phoenix and Richmond probably as the indicator. Which way do you lean?
Well, it kind of depends on which race I'm looking at. At the moment, I'm going to look at all the flat tracks. I think that New Hampshire has more in common with Phoenix, Martinsville, and Richmond than it does with Pocono and Indy. But since Pocono and Indy are the next 2 tracks up on the schedule, I think we've got a good opportunity to grab some drivers, place, and hold them for the next 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. Right after that, they go to Watkins Glen, and the flat tracks have some similarities to road courses. A couple of weeks later, we're back at Richmond. 2 weeks after that, we're back here in New Hampshire. So I think we've got the opportunity for some drivers to get on a roll, and 4 of the last 8 races in the regular season are either on flat tracks, where you have to slow down before you get to the corner, or road courses, where you have to slow down before you get to the corner. So I'm looking at, I'm kind of taking a longer view. And because Indy and Pocono are on the heels of New Hampshire, they are a big part of my data pool this week.
Okay, so looking at the race this week with what you're going to make your decisions on, what's your Yahoo team look like at this point on Tuesday, the week before the race?
Tony Stewart is a favorite. Actually, Tony Stewart, I think, is the favorite. I'd have to say he's the guy who's going to win. Jimmy Johnson is right up there with him for the same reason. He's been strong on the flat tracks already. If not for the last flat contact with, or that late race contact with Clint Boyer that took him and Gordon out, he was going to battle for the win at Martinsville. Then he has a 4th at Phoenix, a 6th at Richmond, and another strong run at Pocono. So those are my two top drivers. Down in B, Earnhardt has been solid on all season, but he's been solid on the flat tracks, particularly. Hard to not put him at the top, but you might not be able to start him if you've exhausted him or nearly exhausted him. So Clint Boyer would be my second driver. He's been solid on the short flat tracks. He would have a sweep of the top 10 on the flat tracks, if not for that late race. Actually, he did finish 10th at Martinsville. So he's been solid there as well. Those are my two B drivers, or my top two B drivers. And down in C, I think it's pretty easy. You got to go with Brian Vickers based on how strong he's been. He had a top 5 the last time he was here in the Red Bull car last year. And then Sam Hornish is going to be out to prove something in that number 22 ride. Looking forward to next year or the rest of this year if Allmendinger doesn't prevail with that second testing.
Yeah, I like Sam Hornish a lot at New Hampshire, and he does have something to prove. And I think that's a real good racetrack for Hornish. We've got a couple minutes to go, Dan. If where we stand in the season, we're what eight races from the chase. You're probably almost a third of the way through the second, third in a lot of these fantasy games that people are playing. Is anybody jumping out to you at this point in this segment of the season that didn't do well in the first segment?
Jeff Gordon is getting back in stride, even with the 4 accidents he had at Daytona, and that's amazing. 4 accidents.
Yeah. 1
on pit road, 1 entering pit road, 1 at the mouth of pit road, and I don't remember what the fourth one was. He still finished 12th. It says more about what NASCAR's done to the cars than it does the driver's ability, because you just hold on and hope you don't completely tear it up.
Right.
But on the heels of 3 consecutive top 10s, I believe, I think he's finally turned his season around. I think it's going to be a long shot for him to make the chase, but we don't care. We just want him to have a strong season, strong races. I think Gordon is going to be one of the best values of the next couple of weeks, even though he probably will miss the chase.
All right, Steve has predicted that Jeff Gordon will never win another race, and I'm firmly on the side that Steve is nuts. But we'll go with that. Dan, real quick, we've got about a minute to go. Who's your pick if you got to pick one guy for this weekend? I think I know, but let's hear it.
Yeah, I got to stick with Tony Stewart.
Yeah.
He's got momentum on his side. He's got flat track momentum, and it's summer. He loves the summer. That's the trifecta for him.
Yeah, he's kind of getting into Tony Stewart time now. It's going to be interesting to see what happens this second half of the season. Thanks, Dan, again for your time this week. He is Dan Beaver. You can follow him on Twitter at Fantasy Race. Read his fantasy racing analyses at NASCAR.com and YahooSports.com. And also, if you're a subscriber to the On Pit Row fantasy newsletter, we have links to Dan's articles there every week, and you can get a highlight of this interview by being a member there. Go to our Yahoo or our YouTube page and see that tomorrow morning. Dan, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
I'll be here.
All right.
Thanks, Dan.
Dan Beaver. All right, Steve-O, who's your pick? I know it's not Jeff Gordon.
No, it will not be
You're picking
Jeff.
Sam Hornish.
I'd almost